The ACLU of Virginia has filed a lawsuit against Fairfax Police for collection, storage of personal information, and that personal information has to do with your license plate on your car. As you're driving to work right now, there's a chance that you are being scanned. That information is being held. Joining us now on the line is Claire Guthrie Gastañaga, Executive Director of ACLU of Virginia, to talk about this lawsuit and why they felt it necessary to do that. Okay, first of all, for those who may not know, just how pervasive is this collection of license plate data?
Well, it's very pervasive, and particularly in Northern Virginia, where the law enforcement agencies have chosen to ignore an opinion published in 2013 by the Attorney General that said that they can't just go around passively collecting information unless they have a reason to do it and it's relevant to a criminal investigation. And
that was aimed at the state police, as I understand it, and the state police were told you can't do it. They stopped the license plate collection, but they still have, am I correct, a memorandum of understanding with other agencies?
Well, yes, the opinion was written to Colonel Flaherty, but it interpreted the law generally with respect to any kind of government agency, including all law enforcement agencies. And the law enforcement agencies in Northern Virginia have memorandums of understanding with agencies across the entire metropolitan region and the federal agencies, including NCIS, and something called the Law Enforcement Information Exchange.
And so they can all share this information, and it's possible for a person's car to be tracked as it travels all over the metro area.
That's correct. And we think that it's very important that police respect the privacy of citizens and that they collect information on us when there's some reason to believe we're doing something wrong, or they're looking specifically for a particular license plate because it's been involved in an Amber Alert or an emergency, or it's a hot car.
Well, the argument here is things are, we live under different conditions here in the Washington area. Fairfax County is adjacent to the nation's capital, and after 9/11, with the very real threat of terrorist activities, and we just learned that Virginia could potentially be housing an ISIS terror cell, that they need this information to either prevent a terror attack or to go after the perpetrators of a terror attack, the same way cameras were used to go after the Boston Marathon bombers. What's the ACLU's response to that?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. The cameras related to the marathon bombers were largely private cameras that were filming for reasons related to private property owners' interest in their own security. But with respect to the license plate readers, if they can establish a need and the use is related to that need, that's one thing. But what they're doing is things like collecting a picture of every license plate that crossed the Potomac on the day of the first Obama inaugural and keeping it forever just because. And we think it should be a situation in which they have a reason to collect the information in the first instance and they don't keep it forever just in case.
So what would you like to see happen here?
Well, what we'd like to see happen, and frankly, the legislature tried to create a safe harbor for law enforcement that allowed them to do this passive collection and keep the information for 7 days or for as long as an active investigation was taking place, and law enforcement objected to that safe harbor. So we want to go to court and establish that, under the current law, which is called the Virginia Government Data Collection and Dissemination Practices Act, that they just don't get to collect a bunch of information just because they want to and just because they might need it someday. They need to have a reason, and they need to relate the information they collect to that reason.
And they've been doing this for how long?
Well, they've been doing it, and the reality is that as new technologies have exploded, people have started using those technologies without any thought to the appropriate policies and privacy protection that ought to be in place. Mm-hmm. And, what we're trying to establish is that our legislature back in 2002 did put a structure in place to guide the decision-making about the use of these technologies, and that's what we want to see guide these police in Northern Virginia.
Well, I was wondering how long they've been doing it, just because I wonder, has there been an instance from the ACLU's understanding here, or anyone for that matter, any investigation that suggests that this information has been used improperly or abused?
We don't have any specific information that the information has been improperly used, but here's the deal. We should be, if we want a democracy, we need to have a situation in which we know more about the government than the government knows about us. And that's increasingly not the case. Mm-hmm. Government shields its information, like the Fairfax County Police in the context that the Fairfax County New Police Commission is looking at. They take the position that everything they do is secret, and yet, when they then they go out and collect a lot of information about us, which they upload into a database. And the more data points you have, the more you know about somebody. So, there are circumstances and situations in which this license plate information married to cell phone tracking, married to a bunch of other information, can tell you a lot about, where you go, who you see, what church you attend, whether you go to a psychiatrist or not, whether you go to an AA meeting, depending on where your car is parked or where they catch a data point of you.
Let me change topics just a moment, because there's also right now in the District of Columbia, and I know you're in Virginia, but in the District of Columbia, they're really wrestling right now with this issue of how to use the police body cams. And the mayor, on one hand, says, we don't think that just anybody should be able to FOIA this information, that it needs to be, somewhat protected. And some of the members of the council are actually holding hearings today to say that, we think that ought to be FOIA'd. That keeps the police honest. Where does the ACLU come down on the use of police body cams?
Well, thanks for asking about that. And our Secure Commonwealth panel in Virginia will be looking at those same issues tomorrow. And the answer to that question is that information about an individual should be always available to that individual. No matter who that person is.
Okay.
And including, in the context of their knowing what the police have about them in a criminal investigation where they're being prosecuted.
All right, so let me say, so you're saying that if I get stopped and I don't like the way it went down, I ought to be able to FOIA that video, right?
You should be able to get the video of you, absolutely.
What if you're a reporter and you find out, for example, that a city councilman has been stopped under questionable circumstances? Right. Should I be able to FOIA that?
We think that you have to make, there need to be rules that create a presumption of openness with respect to things that have a significant public interest attached to them. So that might be one, but we also want to guard the privacy of individuals from the public. So that's why it's so very, very important that there be thoughtful consideration of what the appropriate policies are before body cams are deployed. I mean, again, if you're in a culture of secrecy, if you're in a culture where police don't believe in civilian authority, the use of body cams isn't going to fix a lot of the issues that people are concerned about. So you have to work on the culture, and you have to get the policy right, and then you put the equipment on people.
But you would be against, say, the idea that an employer wants to find out if a potential employee has had interaction with the police. Right now, it would only public records would only show if the interactions resulted in an arrest.
Correct.
But potentially an employer could do a FOIA request on anything involving it and get the video of those interactions. You wouldn't want that to occur. Right?
No, and that's why I say there's a really important balance to be struck between the privacy of individuals and the openness of public records, and it's not always an easy balance to find. We think that there are certain situations involving matters of significant public interest, like a situation involving alleged use of force, for example, where the video should be available.
A very
generally.
Specific incident, not just because a reporter could say, we want to see all of the arrests for the last 3 years to see how many police forget arrests. We want to see every police interaction for the last 3 years to see how many happened with African Americans, how many with Latinos, and how many with Caucasians. That would be way too wide. I mean, they could make an argument that there was a public interest, but still, that's pretty wide-reaching.
Yeah, that's wide-reaching, and here's you have to make a decision about what you're going to keep too.
Right.
And the policies that a couple of the police departments here in Virginia are looking at are ones in which they flag the video early as to whether it's something that involves something that needs further consideration. So it involves an officer use of force. It involves a citizen complaint. Right. It involves a criminal act. And if it's not a flagged video, then it's automatically purged from the system.
We'll have to leave it right there.
That would be a good thing. Then you have, you know whether it's something that you're keeping to look at a personnel question involving an officer's compliance with policy, or whether you're keeping it because it's related to criminal investigation.
All right, we got to leave it right there. Claire, thank you so much. Claire Guthrie Gastañaga from the ACLU of Virginia.
Time to talk to you guys.
Thank you.